Greetings. It's Monday, January the 5th, in the brand new year of 2026. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Well, currently, the United Nations, otherwise known as the United Nonsense, is bitching and moaning about the United States. What's new there? A meeting of the Security Council is currently going on as I record this. It's been some time since I watched such an event, and frankly, it's worse than I remember. It's quite laughable. In spite of what people think who watch these things and what they were taught at school, the United Nations was never designed to be populated by anything less than developed countries that could actually contribute something, not the dozens and dozens of parasites and tin pot dictators and corrupt backward garbage holes and other such descriptive terms that could be used to explain a lot. Yes, they think that the president of Venezuela, or I should say the former strongman, he was never really president, he lost the election. Seems they don't want to talk about that when they toss about the word democracy. Wonder why. Anyways, Maduro is this morning being arraigned in federal court, and there are people protesting that he should be released, including the new communist mayor of New York. Wow, you could never, ever, ever make this stuff up. If someone wrote a novel about this, it would be laughed out of any editor's office. It's bizarre. But here's what's going on. The U.S. is saying, or President Donald Trump is saying, that they're going to be running Venezuela. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how they do that. The vice president there, who's either the president or the acting president, we're not really sure, but considering Mr. Maduro is not going to be departing an American prison cell anytime soon, I don't know what they're going to do down there. It's going to probably be let to go into chaos. This is something that usually the Americans do, is they cut off the head of the snake and let the snake wither and die and then come in and skin it. The thing that is very refreshing to see, however, is that Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's probably wondering why he took this job in the first place about now, well, he's starting to talk about Cuba. And the president is also talking about Cuba. And guess what? As predicted, as you heard here, folks, Cuba is not going to get another drop of Venezuelan oil anytime soon, if ever. That island is going to die, or I should say the communist dictatorship that has been such a bane on human civilization for so many decades is going to die. Hopefully, within a couple of years, we'll all be booking vacations to Havana and staying at brand new hotels and all sorts of wonderful things. But that country is going to go. Now, Venezuela, how that's going to be controlled, I don't know. I don't think they're going to put too many boots on the ground there, but it's going to be managed in some way that is probably or has been just as well thought out as that military operation, which, let's face it, was brilliant. They did an amazing job. Of course, one of the things that is not usually talked about is the CIA was certainly involved, and one of the weapons they use are suitcases full of money. In a country that is that corrupt, if you have more money than anyone else, you're the one who buys the favors. So I'm sure somebody walked up and said, here's some American dollars, senor. Just make sure you don't shoot any anti-aircraft guns or missiles when we come in, okay? And the guy would say, gracias, take the money, and walk away from his post. I'm sure something like that went on. It's the way the Americans do things. If you can't beat them, buy them. Well, we'll see how that goes, but the other thing that is tied to this, and I've explained this in my special report of a couple of days ago, is Iran. Now, as I speak, Iran is going through a revolution. Unfortunately, a lot of protesters are being murdered by the rather revolting Islamic fundamentalist government there. I've been in touch with contacts in the Iranian community. It is a confused situation, but this is their chance, and everyone knows it. I was very happy to see an Iranian police lieutenant on video last night burn a picture of their supreme leader was spray painting "Long Live the Shah," the new guy who'd be coming in. So they're pretty much committed. Now, the one thing that has to happen, and I hope it does, Donald Trump says he's going to protect the protesters, and he better do that. If there aren't any American bombs dropping or something going bang anytime soon, he will have lost a lot of credibility, and a lot of Iranians will have lost their lives. They are fighting for their existence as humans. Islamic fundamentalism is one of the worst things that the human race has ever come up with. Really, next to communism, it's one of the worst things that we have on this planet, and both need to be eradicated. So let's see how this goes. I tend to think that this is going to have a better shot of succeeding than another uprising that occurred not that long ago. The Iranian government this morning said that they were going to be giving the equivalent of about a few dollars to each and every person in local currency, which is worth about as much as low-quality toilet paper. And they'll be given a little bit of money. I think it's equivalent to €6. That's not that much. It's what, $5 or something like that, or $10. I forget the exchange rate. And that'll last for 4 months. But I really hope that they win. The Iranians are a beautiful people, and they have suffered enormously for nearly half a century, and nobody has helped them. But at the end of the day, they have to help themselves. I've talked a lot about never going to war with Iran, mostly because going to war with a country as a direct confrontation, you'd be involving yourself with the general population. This needs to be done surgically, just like in Venezuela. One of the players in this that you're not hearing anything about, the Israelis definitely are not going to sit by and do nothing. If there's one country on the planet that wants to see the Iranian revolutionary Muslim government gone, it's them. They have very close ties with this incoming Shah, if he is actually incoming. So over the next day, hopefully today, or tomorrow, you're going to see something go bang in Iran, or it will be another horribly failed attempt. But thousands are supposedly killed right now. That's coming up from different sources because the government is just going out there with machine guns and mowing down protesters in some places. I hope those reports are not true. But we are right now in the midst of, as I said, a triple play that could turn even bigger. Now, I think Venezuela was a trial run for a takeover of Colombia and eventually the major prize, Mexico. These countries are nothing but a threat to the United States because they're run by criminals. Yes, we've got to stop the drugs coming into the United States, but this is something I don't see the neocons or especially the liberals talking about. Until we make drug dealing in the United States punishable by death, and I mean death, not this sit on death row for 50 years. I mean actually put people down for dealing drugs. We're not going to see an end to this problem. That's what I miss about the Far East. Out there, you get caught with more than 10 grams of heroin, cocaine, or in most cases, or at least many of the places I know, marijuana, you are executed. Less than that, you're considered an addict and you are given a stiff prison sentence. More than that, you hang. Singapore is very, very famous for that, and they're very, very formal. They weigh you the day before your execution to make sure the rope is just the right length so it won't decapitate you or make you strangle. Very considerate. I like Singapore when it comes to that stuff. So we have to remember that this is about drugs. It is about oil, although the oil in Venezuela is not oil the United States really wants or needs, but China wants it, and Cuba was getting it. Venezuela was once one of the richest places in the world. And when we leave today, I'm going to go into some thoughts on that. Meanwhile, back to the United States, or Somalia, which is one and the same in the once beautiful great state of Minnesota. Tim Walz, remember him, Tampon Tim, the guy who was into the LGBT, XYZ, whatever rights and thought that men's restrooms needed tampons. Well, The word is this morning he may not be running for re-election, or he's announced it, or he's made the decision. It's a little bit vague right now. Well, that's fine. This guy who was running for vice president under Kamala Harris, well, he's presided over the destruction of that once most beautiful and prosperous state, and also oversaw the theft of billions of dollars by an amazing number of Somalian invaders. You know, Somalians have an IQ average of what, something like 65 or 70? It's really weird. Why were they brought into this country? Do you think all that money just stayed in the United States? No, it's been sent back to Somalia, so it could be used to do all sorts of nasty things, including train terrorists that are eventually going to kill Americans. I don't know of any better or worse example of liberal insanity in the United States than Tim Walz. The fact that he's not going to run for re-election, well, he should resign today, but we have our own conflict in this country we're going to have to deal with, and that is the leftist, Marxist, liberal insanity that has presided over a significant portion of our country, California, Illinois, New York. Yeah, we're into some turmoil as well. So we have to be careful of that. And one of the signs of that was reported this morning, an attack on the private home of Vice President Vance in Ohio. Now, the details are still sketchy. This is new information. But there's talk elsewhere of Antifa cells here in the United States. Remember, we haven't heard from Antifa much, have we? Right now it's just talk. I haven't been able to find any verifiable evidence. But it's talk in a lot of the places where if something was going on, it would be there. In other words, where there's smoke, there's usually some sort of fire. Now, I hope somebody is watching that terrorist organization, and Antifa is a terrorist organization. But for those of you who laugh at them and think they're just a bunch of weirdos, it's important to point out something. Never underestimate the danger that could be posed by green or blue-haired liberal pseudo-communist vegans devoid of brain protein who have possession of firearms or possibly something worse. The United States has many enemies, and one of the things that enemies like to do is find people who can cause trouble, and Antifa is certainly one of those groups, if you can call them a group. They're more like a mob, but they are very dangerous, and they're not to be taken lightly. And the fact that they've been quiet for so long, well, that should say something there. Now, one can only hope and pray that the more professional people in federal law enforcement are keeping an eye on them, preferably both eyes. Now, in closing, I'd like to speak about the people of Venezuela, Iran, and the other once prosperous and civilized countries around the world that have descended into darkness, and the potential for the United States of America to fall into that category. Now, for the last couple of days, I've been watching all sorts of commentators, reading all sorts of posts, and listening, in some cases one-on-one, with people in the Iranian exile community or diaspora. They are very happy that their country may be free from this horrible tyranny. Now, I'm thinking back to when I was in high school, 1979, and the Shah of Iran was forced from power in that country. Why? Because he wasn't respecting quote-unquote human rights. He had his own security apparatus that would basically be eradicating the people who were a threat to the country internally. And of course, the students, the same sort of people you see now, maybe some of them were the same people, and much of the general population were out in the streets in the millions saying, "Death to the Shah, death to the Shah, death to the Shah. Bring on Khomeini." I remember that. You can find archival video of this, of hundreds of thousands of people in Tehran holding up pictures of Khomeini, who was in exile in France at the time, saying, "Bring him back. Get rid of the evil Shah. Force him out. Death to the Shah." And after he finally did leave, the mobs, well, they actually went to the grave of his father and destroyed it. Real nice people. But I'm looking at the video now, and I'm looking at the video recordings from back then, and they look very much the same. The Iranians did this to themselves. For all of you from the Persian Empire of thousands of years, I'm sorry, you people were idiots back then. You were total idiots. You had a very civilized government. You know that back then the Shah had a branch of the military called the Literacy Corps? They sent trained soldiers in teaching, reading, and writing out to the countryside to educate people. I don't know of any other country that has a branch of the armed forces dedicated to literacy. Do you? No, that place wasn't so bad. People are blaming it on this or that, but you know what? At the end of the day, it was the same sort of mobs that we're seeing in the streets now that were calling for the death and destruction of the Shah and the government and the civilization that was such a wonderful one at one time. So this didn't happen in a vacuum. He was put in power by the will of the people. It wasn't a handful. It was not an armed coup. In fact, most of the military ran for their lives because they were considered targets. No, the same thing with Venezuela. Remember Hugo Chavez? Yeah, back in the late 90s, he had headed up something called the Fifth, what was it called? The Fifth Republic or something? I forget the name of it. Anyways, he was elected, and then he got this clown in after him. He died of cancer. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. But he nationalized all the foreign infrastructure in the country and drove it into the dirt. He was elected. Venezuela was filthy rich. Gold, silver, petroleum, uranium, lithium for batteries. Wow. You Venezuelans did this to yourselves. I'm sorry if that sounds politically incorrect, especially if you're of the right-wing crowd and are cheering this on. Oh, I'm happy to see these guys go as well. But we got to remember they did it to themselves because they were stupid. And if the United States goes down this route, it's because our people are stupid. Frankly, I wish the United States didn't have to clean up the stupidity of other countries, but that's what it's doing. Thank goodness that no Americans were killed when the Americans went into Venezuela to arrest that drug-dealing thug. But U.S. really shouldn't be the world's policeman because, frankly, the rest of the world, in many cases, is not worth it. Sure, we have to deal with them. Sure, we have to trade with them. And it's nice if we can get along and learn from each other and work together. But let's face it, the Islamic Republic of Iran came into being because of the naive stupidity of Jimmy Carter, cursed be his name, and the stupidity of a massive number of people in what was then beautiful country. So as we move forward, let's do this. Here in the United States, we should learn from these lessons and do what we can to keep the stupidity out of the political realm. But at the same time, the average American has to get themselves very educated on how the world works, and most of all, how power works. There are so many people out there that are protesting the fact that Trump actually did something with Venezuela. And none of these people are interested in looking at reality or the truth or even the history. Oh, those of you who supported Joe Biden, by the way, you know that he was the one that put the $25 million bounty on the head of the president of Venezuela? Nobody protested that. Well, here's what we've got to do, guys. The U.S. has to remain strong militarily because the world is full of crazy people. But at the same time, we have to look at something that's a very uncomfortable truth. The worst enemies we have right now are not overseas. We can pretty much take care of anybody. The United States has the world's largest air force. You know which country has the second largest air force? The United States Navy. The military power of the U.S. of A. is beyond most people's comprehension, including that of most Americans. No, the danger we have right now of turning into an Iran or turning into a Venezuela is here in our backyard. Our political establishment is made up of people who are just as corrupt, just as stupid, just as arrogant, and just as evil as those who took over Iran and those who took over Venezuela and so many other countries in this world that have people in them that just want to live decent lives and be happy, secure, fed, and clothed and housed. There's a lot of bad guys out there, and some of them are in our own backyard. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends and share with your enemies, unless they are ultra-leftists, in which case they need to be done away with. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. This podcast originates at Substack. My handle there is aureliancolumn.substack.com. I am up on other social media platforms, but not Facebook. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember, Clown World, the deep state, and all evil, corrupt, political players in our world must be destroyed. Good day.